Again, welcome to Purpose of This Book with David G and David G. And we are in chapter 7 on page 100. But before we start reading the new content, David is going to just sort of catch us up to where we are in this part of the book.
Thanks, David. My name is David. I'm a recovered alcoholic and a drug addict. And yeah, so Bill, thus far, what we studied last week, anyways. So, like David said, we're in the chapter working with others. So, some good direction on how to work with the candidate, the prospect. And what we covered last week was Bill pointed out that perhaps we're going to have some domestic problems. I don't know how he knew that. Divorce and separation is the way he stated it. The same way as he knew in the ninth step that alcoholics owe money. That's how he knew through our experience. But what he does here is he gives us some, he talks about the principles that we should be living by. And the principles that he's talking about are the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we started on page 98 in the third paragraph. And he also talks about, and he gives us some really timely hints on how our behavior needs to change. At least my behavior needs to change. And he talks about argument, bottom of the page on 98. He talks about argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. That's something I really need to absorb, to soak in. So he's talking about how we can have disagreements, not to be an argument or fault finding. And then if we do that, some great benefits come from that. And that'll pour over from page 98 over to page 99. He says, in many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must, circle the word must if you'd like, to be done if any results will be expected. So if I stop arguing, if I start pointing fingers and fault finding, great results will, and it talks about if we do this on a regular basis, and if I persist this for a few months, just like anything else, just like in the 11th step, practicing the 11th step in this conscious contact with God, the morning prayer, the evening review, things are going to change internally inside of me. It's natural, it's spiritual in nature, and that's how it works. And it says on the top of page 99, if persisted for a few months, so a timeline, a time frame there, the effect of a man's family is sure to be great. So I'm going to take that as a promise. And at least it wasn't my house. You know, when I stop pointing fingers and stop blaming others, and I take responsibility for my actions, and I stop arguing, and I stop fault finding, guess what? Arguments stopped altogether. So who is the one responsible for the arguments in my house? It was me. It was never her. She didn't need to change anything. I needed to change. But with that in regard, if I practice this for a few months, it becomes a habit, becomes a discipline, becomes something that I'll have all the time. And this is how we practice things today, every day. So, and then it says later on in that paragraph, it says, little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. That has been my truth. It's happened with my daughters. It's happened with my wife. It's happened with everybody in my family. But here's the thing: in the last sentence, it says these things can be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. Helpfulness and friendliness are the exact opposites, as far as I'm concerned, of arguing and fault finding. Because if I'm happy and I'm full of friendliness, if I treat my wife the way the child of God that she is, I'm not going to have these disagreements. I'm going to have these uproars in my life. I'm going to have some balance in my life. You know, I have some emotional sobriety. You know, emotional sobriety can be found in each and every one of these principles in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Every one of these steps has something to do with our emotional sobriety. This is about growing up. You know, how selfish I was as a child, you know, self-centered as a child. Those things are just normal to be a self-centered person. But to carry that self-centeredness into adulthood, it means I've never matured. So as I mature and work through these steps, I have emotional sobriety. I'm getting relieved of self-centeredness and selfishness, right? And that's the result of these steps in a relationship with God. And then as we go down to the bottom of the page, it talks about this means a new attitude and a spirit all around. So for both parties, we're going to start having a better relationship. It's going to be based on love and affection if we stay together. But the bottom of the page of 99 is something that I want to talk about for a second. It's the last sentence before the last paragraph. When the time for living together has come, it may be apparent to both parties. So if I get divorced or if I get separated, can I stay sober? And my answer is absolutely I can. And the book even says that. It says in that last paragraph of 99, let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. And I wrote the word nonsense above that because David and I have a good friend, Mark B, who thought he needed to have his wife back and his kids back. And you know, that never happened, never came to fruition, never got his kid. And he's sober as long as David and I. And he didn't have to have them back for him to stay sober. Why? Because anything that I put in front of my sobriety, I'm going to lose. Consider what I'm saying there, absorb that for a moment, if you would, and think about anything in your past that before you got sober or even in sobriety, if you relapse, when you put something in front of my sobriety and I drank again, it's because I put something in front of my sobriety. I cannot put God is the only thing that goes in front of my sobriety. Then it says at the bottom of the page, 99, third paragraph, it says, remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people, not dependent on your home group, not dependent upon my sponsor, not dependent upon my neighbors, my employer, or anything else. It's dependent upon a relationship with God. Circle that and highlight. That is the most important thing. Please, as a sponsor of many people, do not be dependent upon me to solve your problems or to think that I'm going to be reliable enough to be there at your beck and call. I want to be there as much as I possibly can, but I'm a human being and I have a career, I have a family, I have all kinds of obligations in my life. What we're working for is to have a relationship, a conscious contact with God in 11. And if I have this conscious contact with God, I'd be dependent upon a power greater than myself. And I can call on that power and I have the access to that power 24/7. Not to say that we're not supposed to discuss things with others. We absolutely are in counsel with people for sure. But as it goes through the paragraph, and we're on page 1. Oh, yeah, that's about where we're going to end. So what I wanted to end on, which is so important, is saying that it's dependent upon a relationship with God. I can't stress that enough. Is as I practice all these principles, all 12 principles in my life, that my relationship with God is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm going to feel the presence of God about me all the time. He is closer than my breath. I just got to get rid of the things that are blocking me. The steps are designed to do exactly that. So that's kind of what my wrap up for what we did last week. And let's commence forward in the book on page 100. You're muted, David. I need you to be unmuted.
Thank you. Yes. All right, here we go. Page 100, first full paragraph. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Abby, anything?
I just have dictates, which is an order, command, rule, or principle.
All right, so let me hop in here real quick. Look at this whole paragraph. Everything in here is a direction or a promise or the combination of a direction with a promise. Every piece of this. So starts off direction. Both you and the new man, so both of us, shoulder to shoulder, must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. And you know what? Let's just pause here for this. This is not just talk when we say we go through this thing shoulder to shoulder. We're all equals here, right? There is no hierarchy among the membership. And the reason why I know that is I have 3 roles in the recovery portion of my spiritual life, right? I am a student perpetually, always learning and improving. I'm a practitioner of the things that I learn, and I am a teacher, right? Because I have to step guide, I have to sponsor, I have to take people through the work. And I think a lot of times we get caught in this putting step guides or sponsors up on a pedestal, right? Creating this sort of hierarchy. It's a bad idea. David just talked about this, right? This is ultimately about my relationship with God, right? That is the foundation of the triangle that represents our legacies. And then one of the other sides in that triangle is unity. And there's nothing in our traditions, especially in tradition 1, that suggests, well, we all band together, but some of us are more revered than others because we've been sober longer. No, there's nothing remotely close to that. What it says is we do all this stuff together. Me and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. I continue to get better. I grow in understanding and function. Here's a promise. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. Well, if I persist in what? If I persist in walking in the path of spiritual progress. When we look back, this is another promise, guys. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. So the first sentence is direction. Second sentence is a promise. Third sentence is a promise that contains direction. It says, when I'm going to look back and realize the things which came to us as a result of what direction, that I put myself in God's hands. But I love how Bill's layering this on in these different order and combinations. And then this last one is direction followed by more promise. So we have promise, direction, promise with a direction, and now direction with a promise. Follow the dictates of a higher power, that's the direction, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. That's the promise portion of the statement.
Well done. Yeah, so both you and the new man must. Again, let's circle the word must there and highlight it and walk day by day or walk on the path of spiritual progress. So the spiritual path of progress is me, like David pointed out, and I love that terminology of shoulder to shoulder. You know, I'm not better, I'm not more deserving of my sobriety than anyone else is, not worse than either. With my sponsor, or my step guide, whoever's taking me through this work. And if we persist, and I looked up the definition in the old term of what persist means. So persist means, let me pull it. I wrote it down, but I'm going to take it off of my phone because I had it written there too. Persist means it's a verb, so it's an action, right? To continue to do something or exist past the expected time. Here's what you want to wait for, even when faced with opposition or difficulties. I love that. What are going to be my opposition or my difficulties? Well, I'm going to be my opposition. I promise you that. And what's going to show up in my life? Selfishness and self-centeredness. I'm going to be driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, right? If I'm in untreated alcoholism, those things are alive and well. As well as the bedevilments on page 52. That's the opposition. That's my difficulties. And I don't have the power to remove those things. That's why I have to be diligent in the 10th step all day long. And then it says, when we look back, we realize that the things, back to page 100, I apologize. When we look back, we realize the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. God has better plans for me than I ever could have planned. Figured out. And here's the analogy that I use, and it's my truth anyways. If you would have gave me a piece of paper, my first 30 days in Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, and said, what do you expect to get out of AA your first year of sobriety? I would have sold this program so short. Yeah. And it wasn't monetarily, honestly. I was in debt for a very long time. Obviously, I'm a cocaine addict. If you're a drug addict like me, you had a lot of debt. I believe that would be true for you too. But man, something internally, something was different inside of me. My insides started matching my outsides. I started not foul fighting. I started to stop arguing. I started participating in my children's lives. You know, I was welcomed into those things because my actions had changed. If my actions change, I will be invited into scenarios that I was not invited into prior to that. That's only time. My words are meaningless. I'm sorry, it just falls on deaf ears. I was wrong is another form to say that. How can I correct this? And then I need to correct this. But I'm telling you, when I put things in God's hands, he has done things with me. And now coming up on 25 years of sobriety, we don't have enough time to finish out the calendar year of all the miracles that have taken place in my life. I promise you, or for David, or for Rob, or for any of us here. I mean, I'm not talking about making a gratitude list out either. I'm talking about having a conscious contact with God and being aware that could I have performed these things on my own power, including that spiritual experience? Could I have done that? I could not have. Could I have found another way to do that? No, I could not have done that on my own power. You know, and I don't remember who said it. I can't remember who said it. Maybe David can remember, but someone said, if there was never Alcoholics Anonymous, if it was never written the book, could you have somehow find found a way to stay sober and had a spiritual experience, since that's the only thing that we offer, and it's the only thing that Dr. Jung says will work for us, or so forth? Could I have done that? I don't think so. So this spiritual piece of literature here, these 174 pages, including the doctor's opinion, are our treasure map to having a better life, to having a life for other people to have a better life that are involved with me. And there's a lot of people involved with me today. That's a miracle in itself. Then to go on a little bit longer, it says, follow the dictates of a higher, back to page 100. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new, circle that because that's an experience I haven't had yet, in a wonderful world, which is a fourth dimension, I would say, no matter what your present circumstances are. We're talking about the new guy. My present circumstances were awful, going to jail, maybe divorce, loss of job, financial bankruptcy, all these other things. But they're saying besides the circumstances, I can still get well. And the thing about it is, it says if I follow the dictates of a higher power, if we went back to page 88, if you wanted to bounce around the book a little bit with me and go back into the last part of page 88 in the second paragraph, and when we end the chapter to working with into action, it says we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in this simple way. What are those simple ways? Well, we just did, prior to that page, we did 86 and 87, which is step 11, but it's all the steps in our life. But this is not all. On 88 still, there is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. My experience is that if I practice this, I persist this, if I have faith that this power can do things, because they've done it for you, why can they not do them for me? Then I can live in this new and wonderful world no matter what my present circumstances is. And I will tell you now, is when I go to jails, I go as a volunteer. I do not go as an inmate any longer in handcuffs. I do not have to wear that orange stupid jumpsuit. I don't have to shower with other men when I don't want to have to do that. All those freedoms that I take for granted a lot of times. Real alcoholic and drug addict of my type, that is the alcoholic's life was the only one that I knew. It was. I was going to jail since I was 14 years old. I got sober when I was 38. I can't even count how many times I got locked up. I don't even know how long my rap sheet is. Well, actually, I do, because I applied to volunteer at a prison one time, and they turned me down because some of my crimes were nature of violence against the police department, and they turned me down. And I said, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. This things that I should be a proper candidate to go to prisons and talk, because I've committed all these crimes and I'm sober now. And it was a 5 years sober when I did that. And they said, come to think of it, yeah, we would love to have you. And I get to do that. I haven't done it in a while, but I get to do that. And it's a blessing. So that's all I got there, David.
Cool. Okay, paragraph 2 on 100. More direction. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do. But urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety.
I just have quarrels, which is a disagreement or an angry dispute.
Thanks, Ab. So a lot more direction in here and some warnings peppered in, and when we're changing the audience a little bit. So we've talked about this a number of times as we've gotten further into the back half of the 164 here, and we're going to see a lot more of it in the chapter to wives and the family afterwards, that the audience becomes these other important people in our lives, right? Our spouses, our family, notably, I think children, but certainly parents and other people that we're close to, familial relations, and to our employers, and if you think about it, as we recover and get more recovered, increasingly we go out into the world, to practice these principles in all our affairs, where do we spend, I don't know, the most amount of time is with our spouses, our family, and on the job, right? So hence makes a lot of sense to have these 3 chapters. So, one of the things that has changed a little bit, as we all know, having gotten sober in the last, years or decades, is that most of us find our way to recovery by showing up at a meeting. We looked it up online, or maybe a doctor or a treatment center, something sent us to a meeting, and we came on our own. Occasionally we came with a spouse or something, but most of the time we just sort of wandered in. And so it's very common these days that we don't know people's spouses or families until, there's some sort of event, some sort of fellowship thing, maybe a party, and then we get to meet those people. It was a little different back in the day, and David brings this up a lot. As speaking specifically about alcoholism, is very much considered and still considered a family illness, a family disease, because it really sickens the whole family. And in the early days, when the alcoholics would get together, once a week for their formal meeting, or just, nightly get-togethers in their homes, if an alcoholic, is typically a man back early, if he showed up without his family, Dr. Bob said, you better show back up tomorrow with your family. Otherwise, I'm going to go and pick them up and bring them in so they can be a part of this recovery process, right? So that's a little bit different today. And I think as we've urged some caution around, this says when working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. I would extend that to say, if you're not involved with the, I'm going to just say the alcoholic's family, be careful about going out of your way to get integrated with them, right? It's a little different when the family comes together to recovery versus when it's just one person, right? Plenty of times I've had men's wives call me up, because their husband started drinking again, or there's plenty of situations, or I said, we met spouses over the course of recovery, but I'm not sure that in this day and age, as culture has evolved and how our practice of the program has evolved a little, we just need to use some discernment about how we get in, how we interact with someone's family. So this is a direction. Take care not to participate in their quarrels. Don't get into their old stuff that's still in those old fires that are still burning. Why? Why should we not do that? Well, because you may spoil a chance of being helpful if you do, right? Our goal here, whether it's the suffering person, the alcoholic, the addict, right, the obsessive, whatever it is, whether it's them or their family, our goal is to be an aid to try to get them to God. That's it, right? And so if we get caught up in all these human emotional fires burning, we're going to get distracted. We're going to get pulled down into the morass with them, okay? So instead of getting sucked down into that stuff, what are we supposed to do? What's more direction? Urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. So we're giving the family some perspective that they may or may not appreciate getting. Here's some more direction. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. So it's a little bit here like Bill's saying, handle us with kid gloves. Don't upset us. Understand we're sick. That's a tough ask of families as we're getting sober and recovered as well. But this is still the suggestion that Bill's making. You should point out, so more direction, that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. So there's 2 things here. One is pointing out that he's got defects of character, which, by the way, the family is well aware of. But I think it does good to say, hey, as someone who's helping your husband, your wife, I recognize they have these defects of character too. And also, here's some more consideration. They will get better. This person will get better as they get closer and closer to God. So many of these character defects will be relieved, but it is not an overnight matter. These things just take time. Show them, so demonstrate that he's entered upon a period of growth, right? And maybe that's easy to do where they've actually seen some progress. Maybe they want the progress to be faster. Maybe they want the instant gratification, just like the alcoholic or the addict as well. But show how, hey, look, he hasn't drank in 5 days or 5 weeks. Look, he's getting better. Look, he hasn't been out all night. He hasn't yelled at you as much. All of these little things, right? These are the demonstrations. Show him that he's entered upon a period of growth. More direction. Ask them, the family, to remember when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. So I would
Mm.
say the blessed fact of his physical sobriety, right? Which is a good start. But also, how about the blessed fact of his recovering and recovery? That everything in his psyche, in his head, his heart, and his gut are getting healthy, getting better, getting cast aside and replaced by new thoughts and feelings and reactions.
And it's a neat paragraph because the first thing it says is when we're working with a man and his family. So working, what does that look like? That means I'm actually really committing a lot of time to this person and taking them through the work, like I'm trying to make myself available to them as much as I possibly can, and to the family to some extent, right? We have Al-Anon groups today, so this is not my job to counsel the family by any means. I wouldn't be very good at it anyways, and the reason why is because it talks about it. You should take care not to participate in their quarrels. So what if I do participate in their quarrels and I take a side, I take a stance, I sign off on something, on I'm putting myself in a really bad position because there's two sides of the pancake. I'm just going to assume right now and my question always is to the person I'm working with, where was God in all this? Did you stop and invite God in before you had this discussion? We're talking about a quarrel. I don't know if that what that looks like, if that's an argument necessarily. Sounds like it's a little watered down argument, possibly. I'm not sure, but I wanted to avoid that, like the plague, just like Bill said with argument and fault finding. So, but the bottom line is, I'm not signing off on anything. Uh, your bad behavior, I'm not signing off on it. I'm just not going to do it, and I'm not a counselor. The next paragraph is going to give me direction on what I should do as a sponsor and help them through the process of how to have a healthy relationship. This is the brilliance, and David pointed out here too. You may spoil a chance of being helpful, but urge the families. It says, but urge upon a family that he has been a very sick person. So Bill's talking about the warning that's here. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. So I should behave. I should treat my wife. I should not arouse jealousy. I should not arouse suspicion. I should be accountable for my behavior and where I say I'm going to go and where I say I'm going to do. I need to do that. The best way to do that is if I'm a flirt by nature, if I am an attention seeker, which a lot of us are, and I guilty as charged. Best way to do that for me is to pretend like my wife is standing right behind me when I'm in a conversation with the opposite sex or anyone for that matter. Would I behave like that if she was there? Not if I don't want one upside the head. I wouldn't. So then it says you should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. So yeah, earlier in the book it says yes, there's a long period of reconstruction I've had. Again, I'm not signing off on bad behavior though, because the 10th step is allowing me to live in the moment, and he should be just asking and discussing and amending and turning and discussing of these things. I have to pull the what add up, the acronym of that off all the time. And then it says, show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. I hope they're experiencing that. For me, when I first got sober, I didn't see a lot of growth in me at all. I really didn't. And then people started mentioning to me that I was changing, and the one thing, and is probably a little faster for most of you guys than it was for me. Like 2 years sober, I had gone to work like every day, never blew off a day of work. And I told this joke before. It's not really a joke, it's reality. You know what happens when you go to work every day? You find out that everybody else goes to work every day. See, I didn't know that when I was drinking and drugging because I didn't go to work every day. But I found out that they all went to work every day and they performed their job and they get their paycheck and they're really grateful for it and they earned it. But the thing about it is I was 2 years sober, and one of my mates, one of the guys that I work with said, there's something different about you. Like you're a really likable guy now. Now, keep in mind, I was 2 years sober when he pointed that out. So maybe a little slower, probably a lot faster for most of you guys, maybe 2 weeks they were experiencing that, but that was my experience. And I really I ingested that. I was like really like going, wow, this is an internal illness with an internal solution. And there's more work to be done if I want to have that experience all day long and live like that, as Mark Houston says, like living in church, like being in synagogue all day long, like really experiencing the power of God in my life. Then the bottom thing there says, ask them to remember when they are impatient, the blessed effect of sobriety. Remember back, I think it's on 82 in the third paragraph, and it says, hey, Ma, nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong here. At least the wind stopped blowing when the guy comes out of the cellar. It's like, no, that there's got to be more work done than just like the wind stopped blowing, right? I need to change like everything, and it all has to be done internally, and I don't have the power to do those things. But the fact of the matter that I have some physical sobriety is wonderful. Now I want to have spiritual and emotional sobriety. And that's what the steps are designed to me to do, to have a relationship with power.
Okay, third paragraph on 100. If you've been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. Nothing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think here, this is not, I believe, Bill giving us license to play unlicensed marriage counselor. I suspect what's really doing, what he's doing here, if you look at how the reading has been going to this point, is we're saying, hey, we got to help the alcoholic. We got to introduce him to the work, the action, taking the steps so he can have a spiritual experience. And then we're talking here, you know, how we're going to be sort of available to the family and give them some perspective. And increasingly, again, in the chapters to follow, it's going to talk about, you know, making recovery available, a spiritual path available to everybody, you know, whether or not they are sort of the primary problem person, the alcoholic or the addict, the, you know, the overeater, et cetera. Right? So what this is saying is, if you've been successful in solving your own domestic problems, I would say implicitly through recovery in a relationship with God that allows those domestic problems to get resolved, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished, right? So I think it's probably a blend of my experience of improving my relationship in recovery, maybe around with some other sort of practical matters, but again, let's not be unlicensed marriage counselors. But it says, in this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. So it's not about, hey, you guys got to straighten this out. You're doing a lousy job. It's more like, I know this is hard. Here's how my wife and I got better. And you know, maybe give some spiritual tactics as well. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. So again, show, demonstrate, relate how this thing works. And therefore it becomes the person we're trying to help concede that there's a possible path, right? That there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So as David pointed out, you know, here we are, the prior paragraph. Here's the next paragraph. Bill's answering and telling us what we should be doing in this relationship with our sponsee or with our candidate, our new guy. So if you're successful in your own domestic problems, yeah, I am. So what do I get to share? I get to share my experiences. David's point is so valid, so important here. I am not a counselor. I don't have any letters behind my name. I am not equipped to do that kind of stuff. If you think you need counseling, therapy for you and your wife, please go. Gone. We both have done. My wife and I have done it twice. I will tell you which one worked better: the time where I wasn't sober or the time where I was sober. Liar, no liar. I will tell you right now, the liar didn't get anywhere at all. You can't get any results from being a liar. I swear. I just found that out. But here's the wonderful thing. So about this whole thing, like I always want to give everyone hope, like anybody I work with. And in the back of the book, in the spiritual experience, in the appendix in the back, in the second one on page 569 in the third edition, and then 567, I think it is, in the fourth edition. I'm going to bounce around, and I'm not going to read the 2 pages, but I just want to put out what this looks like, and to let him know that this is him or her, whoever I'm working with, or they. So if you're in the back of the book in the appendix 2, the term spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. This is the result of working the steps. Again, I couldn't have performed this on my own. Before I got sober, I was going to change everything about me. Like, I really admired a neighbor that lived 2 doors down from me. He was loving, caring, patient, outside with his kids all the time. He'd open up the car door for his wife, even though they've been married many years. They seemed to be loving, caring, affectionate. And I was going to make my change one day. And when I made that change, I was going to be just like that guy. You know what? That's very short lived, because I could pull that off for about a day or two. I'm selfish, I'm self centered, and I want what I want when I want it in return. In untreated alcoholism, I cannot pull that off. Today, I open up the car door for my wife, and she loves it, and I love it too. But it's something new. I started again. We've been married 34 years. Why not keep the spark going? But okay, so let's go into. Let me bounce down to the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph in the spiritual experience. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands, so wait for it. I'll tell you when I want to get to it. Of alcoholics, such transformations, which is change, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James called the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. Here's what I want to talk about. He finally realizes he's undergone profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. I need to know that. This is about drawing closer to power. I got to quit trying to play God and try to fix my relationship. Only thing I can fix is myself, and I can't even do that. But I can have a relationship with God, and he can change me inside. And then my inside starts matching my outsides. And that's my experience with my guys. Invite God in. Again, he's closer to my breath. And if you flip the page, this is some really powerful stuff here too. It talks about page 570 or 568 or whatever edition that you have. It says most of us think, and I'm going to the first paragraph on that page, full one. Most of us think this awareness of the power greater than ourselves is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. This is what I get the result of having a God consciousness about me. So when I don't react to her or him or whatever I'm doing, I respond in a loving, caring, thoughtful way, an affectionate way, as a child of God that she is. And then it says, most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover. What are my problems? Me. I am my problem. I'm selfish and self-centered. We found out I don't have a drink or drug problem. I couldn't have. David and I have been sober for a long time. Most of us here have. It's not a drug problem. It's an unmanageability problem. And then it says, he does not close his mind to spiritual concepts. I can't close my mind to spiritual concepts. Do I desperately need God to stay sober? Consider what I'm asking. And my answer is definitively, yes, I need God in my life. Do I need God in my life to have a successful relationship? I absolutely do. So do I desperately need AA and CA? And do I desperately need God to solve all my problems? That's what the book is promising me, to solve all my problems. So this is what I'm directing the new guy to go to. And then it says he can only be defeated by what? An attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. That's the only two things I can be defeated by, which comes from me. And then it says we find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. So it doesn't say the spiritual part of the program, like some people say, oh, I love the spiritual part of the program. The whole program is spiritual. Stop saying that. Read the text. The text says, we find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. Indispensable. I can't live without them. I have to have them. And I want more of them. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. Give me more. That's why I go to big book studies. That's why I go to literature-based meetings. I want more. I want to learn more about how you live your life. So I think I'll end there because I went on pretty long. But I just wanted to bring that in there because it's hopeful. It's full of promise. is the result of working these steps. And Bill wrote that specifically for us because I didn't have a white light flash. I did not have that. Mine was slow. It was educational time. Okay. And I continue to have them over and over and over.
Okay, fourth paragraph, the bottom of 100. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so.
I just have shun, which is to avoid deliberately or to keep clear of.
Thank you. So assuming we're spiritually fit, that's a condition. We can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. That's a promise. And I think it's like not supposed to do should almost be in quotes, because I think that's a perspective from people outside of recovery, right? Inside of recovery, and this is the point that Bill's making here, is we don't have any limits. When I've got a powerful relationship with God that I'm reliant upon, I'm just fine. I am safe and protected. Says, people have said we must not go where liquor is served. So I'm staying in this kind of fancy hotel. It's a nice place. I'm in Indianapolis on business. And there's a bottle of wine over here. It's one of these places they put the wine in the room because they hope you're just going to open up and drink it so then they can charge you some exorbitant amount for it. Am I threatened by the fact that there's a bottle of wine in here? You know what my relationship with the bottle of wine is? I walked in, I'm like, there's a bottle of wine here. And then I was like, all right, I better unpack my suitcase, right? That was the extent of it. If I can't be in my hotel room with a bottle of wine nearby or a bar downstairs, a restaurant, you know, that if my quote unquote recovery or my sobriety is based on me distancing myself from a danger, I'm on pretty thin ice that I'm treading on, right? That's not what we're talking about here. And that has not been my experience in recovery. So people said we must not go where liquor is served. Disagree, right? We must not have it in our homes. Well, I don't have it in my home because we don't drink. People are welcome to bring alcohol over. Like if we have family over and they want to bring a bottle of wine, go ahead. You know, there's been a couple times people have left booze at our house. We throw it out because, again, we don't need it in our house. We're not going to drink it, all right? We must shun friends who drink. That's ridiculous. My friends are welcome to do whatever they like. I was on my fishing trip with my buddies from college a month ago that we do every year. They drink. They're drinkers. They had a blast drinking whiskey and beer. God bless them. What do I care if they're drinking, right? Doesn't bother me. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. Again, this is 1930s, very different. How could we miss media, TV, movies, internet, all this? People are constantly drinking and doing drugs and all sorts of crazy things. There's no lack of content around that. We must not go into bars. Listen, if I am traveling and by myself and there's a great game on, where do you think I'm going to watch the game? I'm going to go find a great sports bar. I'm going to drink Diet Cokes and eat chicken wings. I'm not going to be threatened by the fact that everybody else there is drinking. Again, God bless them. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. Again, ridiculous. If I can't go anywhere and everything has to be hidden from me, I am a short-fused time bomb or ticking time. Then I'm mixing analogies of explosives here. I'm a short fuse of an explosive that's going to go off at any moment, or a ticking time bomb that's almost run out of time. It's ridiculous. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. My God, in this day and age, how can we not be reminded by alcohol? First of all, I'm in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous several times a week. I'm reminded by alcohol every time I go to a meeting. It's literally, the book is called Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm reminded by alcohol plenty, right? So it's, again, preposterous. And that's what Bill's saying. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so. I think Bill's underselling the point there. I wish he was a little stronger here and say, our experience shows this ain't the case, right? With God, with recovery, in that order, I can go anywhere and do anything. Now, should I be reckless and foolish and put myself in some bad position? No, of course not. But that's the other thing that's happened as I've gotten closer and closer to God. I don't do reckless and foolish things. I have a wonderful, calm, stable, boring life that God has given me. I had enough chaos and crazy in the 31 years before I got sober. The last 20 years have been blissfully simple, right?
Yeah. So you guys probably assume that David and I talk quite often. So we do a lot of 12-step work together. We do this big book study. And I know David went on this fishing trip, and I heard all about the fishing trip because I called him when he got done. You know, he never mentioned to me what the other guys were drinking. Never mentioned to me one time, right? It wasn't a concern, as he pointed out. It never was brought up, and he wasn't ignoring it. He wasn't like discarding it. It just was talking about the fish and that his buddy loves to cook and that he was like a really good cook and then he was waiting to see what he's going to make that night. It's like, I remember the whole story. It had nothing to do with liquor. But assuming he was spiritually fit, as I know he was fine with that. And here's a lot of times you hear this terminology or you hear these things said meanings. Well, you can't work at a restaurant where liquor is being served, so you got to quit your job, or you can't work at a bar. Really? Well, what about people in Al-Anon? Because they say they can have a spiritual experience even if the alcoholic stays or goes. They can get free. So their sobriety or their relationship with God is not dependent upon the alcoholic. It's dependent upon a relationship with God. So they don't have to kick them out. They can if they choose, if that's the path that they need to take. But regardless of this, it's not about the other person. And my wife has a drink at night. She'll have a glass of wine. And I brought this up. I won't go on and beat a dead horse with the whole thing. She's not an alcoholic. She have a glass of wine. But I will tell you this: my first 10 years of sobriety, I don't think she had a drink, and I don't remember her saying this. That's because we were raising our kids, and that's just. I think that's what a responsible person does. I think that it was important to her just to be present, and drinking was not part of her thing. Now that her children are all grown and gone on their own way, she'll have a glass of wine while she's making dinner, or while we're making dinner, or when we go out to eat or something like that, and go on business trips. I can be around that stuff. Do I put myself in that position to go to the bar and hang out with the guys? No, I'd rather go to my room and FaceTime with my wife or one of my grandchildren. That's what I would, at the end of a long business day of meetings, as David's in right now, I'd rather see my wife any day. I spent all day with those guys. You know, they're great, good dudes. You know, everybody's in business together here, and I'm done. You know, I am not. And the other thing you think about is, you know, how can you avoid liquor? If you've been sober for more than 10 minutes, they came up with a new alcoholic beverage. I guarantee it, in the last 10 minutes. You know how I know that? Because at my house, we have a refrigerator and a freezer, a couple of them out in the garage. And my children, when they come over, they bring an alcoholic beverage. I think it is. I don't even know. If I didn't buy it, I don't even try it, right? It's not a Diet Coke or a Diet Dr. Pepper. I'm not drinking it. But there is that liquor in my refrigerator outside. And I don't even know what it is. I have no idea what it is. But it's a different kind of thing that I'm accustomed to. I drank clear liquor. That's what I drank. The brown stuff got me sick. You know, I'm all about tequila. I'm all about vodka. That was my drug of no choice in cocaine. The other thing I want to say about that is I've seen plenty of liquor since I've been sober, and I haven't been affected by it whatsoever. I've never seen any drugs. I haven't. I haven't put myself in that position to do it. I'm not going to put myself in that position to do it. And it's okay. Why would I do that? Maybe some people had to do that, pull somebody out of a dope house or whatever, or help them out, or flush something down the toilet. That is not my story. It hasn't happened to me. But as long as the condition that David pointed out at the very beginning is that I'm spiritually fit, I can go anywhere any other man can go.
Okay, let's continue on. We're now first full paragraph on 101. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. Pause here. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. I'm just going to read these sentences again. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety, physical sobriety, Bill means, would be some place like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. Abby? No, you don't have Eskimo? Okay. Go ahead, Dave. We want you to start us on this.
Okay. So we meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet themselves in an alcoholic mind. We study this. It was pages 23 through 43, the obsession of the mind. I still have an alcoholic mind. The obsession has not been removed. And think about what the 12 steppers did back when Alcoholics Anonymous started. They would have a bottle of booze in their back pocket to detox the alcoholic. You know, Dr. Bob, before he went in for surgery, had 4 bottles of beer. You don't want those big shaky hands by your rectum, because he was a proctologist. If he didn't have steady hands, so he needed to have a drink, right? So he had a drink. That's his last drink. But the thing is, there it says he still has an alcoholic mind. So if the obsession hadn't been removed, and Bob's obsession wasn't removed for 2 years, where Bill's was immediately done in Towns Hospital, mine was at 3 months sober. Because I remember 3 months in one day. I thought, oh my God, I had not thought about a drink all day today. And then the next day, and then the next day after that, and it's like, and then the obsession was removed. But there was some work that had to be done for that to happen. You know, God isn't going to do for me what I can do for myself.
Yes.
And then it says there is something in the matter of his spiritual status. So if I'm not growing spiritually, I'm in big trouble here. So if I don't do a 4-step, if I say I'm going to start doing a 4-step, then, and I don't do it, then I'm in a position where I'm going to drink again. I'm just putting you, I have a reservation. That to me is a reservation. If you say you're going to start your 4-step and you don't do it, you have a reservation, because you were willing to go to any lengths when you just got out of that jail, when she kicked you out of the house, when you lost that job. But now all of a sudden you don't want to do a 4-step. And then it says his only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Iceland, Greenland ice cap. Even there is an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. So kind of a funny story, and maybe, I don't know if I'll tell it funny or not, but so my sponsor just got back from a cruise with his wife for their anniversary, and they went to Alaska, and they went to all these villages, and there was Eskimos, and they had a great time. And I had asked him, I said, hey, did an Eskimo show up with a bottle of scotch or anything? And he's like, no, as a matter of fact, he didn't. You know, it's like, so, and even if he did, he would have been spiritually fit enough, and he wouldn't have drank. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places in a theory he would escape the alcohol problem. Geographics don't work. They just don't work. I know they don't work. I've seen people move all around. They end up coming back here, and the story is the same every single time, because I have no power, no choice, no control. I must get a relationship with God.
Yeah, I just, I get so fired up. I read this stuff and it's like, guys, it's not that difficult. Just getting healthy is just not that difficult. There's only one difficulty. There's only one impediment. Me. That's it. If I just get out of the way and ask for help and get with someone who understands, has a little understanding of this book, I'm going to get better, and I'm going to get better in a hurry. It's really not that, it's not that complex. The work is hard for sure. At the beginning, it gets easier over time, and I love easier. But there's not a lot of complexity here. It's pretty straightforward. So it says, listen, we meet these conditions every day. It means we can deal with any of those situations in the last paragraph. An alcoholic who cannot meet them, who can't meet these conditions, that have to have, avoid places or have people hide bottles, there's something, if the alcoholic cannot meet them, still has an alcoholic mind. What does that mean? They may be physically sober, but they're not recovered. They've not had the vital spiritual experience that Dr. Jung talks about on page 27, or that David took us to in appendix 2, the spiritual experience. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. Every week, I'm sure we talk about this. David, I think, already mentioned it at least once today. The alcohol, the cocaine, whatever it is that I'm powerless over, that is a problem. That is a significant problem. Right? The cocaine was literally killing me. But my real problem is my spiritual sickness, my spiritual malady, my unmanageable life. right? That's why this book and the program contained in it is used in so many different fellowships. Yes, Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, but how about Gamblers Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous, and Al-Anon uses it as a resource. All these different fellowships, because fundamentally, my problem is in my insides. It's internal. It's in my head, my heart, and my gut. It's the sum total of my psyche that starts right under my scalp and goes all the way down to just above the soles of my feet. It's everything inside me that's sick and twisted and rotting. That's what's got to get fixed. And David said this. I'm sure David says this every week. I've heard him say it a billion times. I don't have the power to fix myself. If I did, I wouldn't be here. Right? None of you guys would. We're here because human reliance has failed us, our own and other people about us. We got to get to God. We have to have that vital spiritual experience, a life-saving, bigger than human event that for most of us comes gradually. Damn near all of us, right? And again, yeah, it's sort of ridiculous. His only chance of sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap. And even though an Eskimo might turn over the bottle of scotch and ruin everything, there's alcohol everywhere, right? Those of you guys who've been in the joint, like David talks about, you can make booze right in your toilet, right? Toilet hooch, right in the joint. And ask any woman who sent her husband or any man who sent his wife to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. I cannot escape me, because wherever I go, there I am. And I'm going to be there with my head, my heart, and my gut. And if they're still operating the way they always have, I'm doomed. Good place to stop.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.